As most of you know, I want to be careful. It's a very serious subject. I mean, it is horrifying watching what happened in Waukesha. If you haven't heard, a man took an SUV and he plowed into people, just running them over. There's several casualties, dozens of injuries. There is a very horrifying video where a little girl is just bouncing, a little toddler bouncing in the street, and the car passes within, maybe a foot or two of this kid. And I'm just thinking the parents must have been crying, seeing what happened and knowing how close their child came. It's just horrifying, and we want to know what the motive is. We don't necessarily know. Everybody's speculating, and it's hard to say for sure. But this guy, he has a criminal record involving kids or child, so that's very serious. But he's also a Black Lives Matter supporter. He's supported black nationalism. He's been critical of Trump, and there's been a lot of speculation. So here's the story from the Examiner. Black Lives Matter activist wonders whether Waukesha attack was linked to Rittenhouse verdict. Sounds possible the revolution has started. Now, I'll call out the Examiner a little bit here. His exact quote is a little bit different from sounds possible, and then they stop, then quote, revolution has started. He says, I believe his exact quote is, but it sounds possible that the revolution, okay, to be fair, they're only taking out a couple words. Yeah. He says, but it sounds possible that the revolution has started in Wisconsin. It started with this Christmas parade. This is a guy named Vaughn L. Mays. Now, I don't think it's fair to say this guy is calling for it, agreeing with it, or otherwise. But I think it's important to note that this guy, not like he's a powerful influencer, that's his frame of mind. That he sees this and his immediate reaction was retaliation over the Rittenhouse verdict. Many people on the right have pointed out the same thing. It is 2 days, not even 2 days, not even two full days from the Rittenhouse verdict, when already tons of leftists were saying, I'll be careful about how I phrase it, but threatening death on many people, not just Kyle. You have people going on Twitter saying retaliation, revenge, something like this happens from a guy who's been promoting this stuff on his social media. That's what it seems like. Now, I want to stress the police have said they do not believe it's terror at this point. They're saying he was not being pursued. He was fleeing some crime, which I think makes no sense. We have this from Andy No. He supported BLM causes, George Floyd, black nationalism. And he has a post about how to run away, about running people over on the street and getting away with it. So, that being said, the big takeaway is not what his true motive was. And I say this often when it comes to this stuff. It's how people react. If the left and the right are both reacting that this is political, it becomes political.
Yeah, I think not just how they react. I agree with you on that. How people react, it becomes political. It gives us a pulse check on the country and where we are. We've been hearing this sort of rhetoric kind of bubbling beneath the surface in, internet forums and stuff over the past couple of years, but it's becoming more and more of a mainstream idea. Oh, sorry, I'll get on the mic. But the other aspect of this is the media's culpability. Because the media has been misrepresenting the Kyle Rittenhouse case for the past year. And they've been misrepresenting the case after the verdict, after the facts have come out, over and over. Again, if you watched our show, we had the entire trial streaming and you could see the actual facts coming out in real time from the witnesses who were there. The media has completely whitewashed over those facts being put out there. The only place that's done anything to even mildly walk it back is CNN saying, oh, we now found out that the gun didn't cross state lines.
That clip was amazing. I don't know if you guys have seen it, but they're like, we've learned some things in the trial, and then they just rattle off this huge list of everything they glossed over and got wrong that we've all known since the beginning. And then when Cernovich was like, they're scared of getting sued, the reporter responded with, "Sir, I am just a reporter. No one's making me say this." And I'm like, bull crap.
Yeah, they're just running cover for the Covington, so they don't have a repeat of the Covington trial. But again, I would go even further. I would say that the corporate media, because that's what they are, they have been race baiting hustlers for the past 2 years on an insane level, pushing a divide and conquer agenda.
Yeah, I was going to say
far longer than two. But ever since Occupy Wall Street, I would say it became more prominent. But the last 2 years has kind of crescendoed in this moment of insanity that really has real life effects. We saw the mainstream media purport things that actually resulted in people getting hurt, injured, or killed in many instances. Social media, of course, promoted that. But look at what CNN, look at their headline today. Their headline today was like, it was, quote, "There's nothing more frightening than an angry white man." Yeah. This is after the tragedy.
A day after.
Yes, hours after. 5 people died, 48 people were injured, and this kind of thinking, it's not just an exception to the rule, it is the rule for the corporate media. This guy, he's speaking because he probably watches a lot of corporate media. There was another Illinois Democrat that almost said the same exact thing, Mary Lamansky, who said that this was karma and that this was an act of self-defense because Kyle Rittenhouse was acquitted. So these are mainline white women Karens even talking about the same points as this BLM guy that you just played that just released that video.
Now, how the police going to come out and say, yeah, the guy's political. Yeah, all these political people are celebrating it, but it's not terror.
Well, look, he's not wearing a turban. I mean, to be fair.
Yeah.
Is it? But the left would immediately be like, that's not terror.
I like the subjects of today's conversation. 1, karma. I'm like the resident Indian, so I'm definitely be able to talk about that. Yes. 2, we're talking about defamation, and we're going full turban. So I'm ready to go.
Awesome.
But no, I don't know if you know this, but that's why I started fightwithcash.com. It's I'm suing New York Times, Politico, and CNN for $150 million for defamation because of my work during Russiagate and the Trump administration. They literally defamed me across the board. And then when I left government earlier this year, people were like, I want to sue for defamation. I don't know how to do that. So literally the entire legal trust is, I don't make a dime. We cut checks to lawyers who are willing to take on defamation cases across the country. And that's what we're doing. And I'm glad you guys are fighting the fight. And if you need help, let us know.
I got good news for you. I think at this point you could just be a defamation lawyer and probably be rich for the rest of your life. You'd never run out of work. It's not hard work. I mean, normally, I remember going back a few years and it's like defamation and stuff. And it's like, well, how do you prove damages and how do you prove this and how do you prove that? And these days, it's like, just give CNN 5 minutes to report on the story.
Yeah.
And then you can sue them and it's clear, actionable. It's easy to prove that they were wrong. Yeah. They knew they were wrong, and you just make some money. We'll call it sandmanning.
Yeah, well, we have a bunch of people doing that work, right? Sandman paved the way for going after journalists. Project Veritas has been making huge headway, winning a lot of pretrial motions in New York that people didn't think they could win. New York reinforced its anti-SLAPP statute, made it a lot stronger, and they went ahead and steamrolled right over it in their case against New York Times. And so the biggest bar to a defamation lawsuit has been, can I afford the lawyer to do it? Because lawyers, unless it's a really clear case, and a really clear case of defamation is extremely rare, you're not going to find a lawyer taking it on contingency. They got to put in the hours. If you're going after someone like CNN, the amount of resources that have to be expended to fight those guys is massive. So you can't just assume that you're going to win and be able to recover. I want
to talk about a lot of that in greater depth because we do have a story. There's civil lawsuits filed in the Rittenhouse case, so we'll get much more in depth on this. But I want to shift it back to this tension that's rising between the left and the right following this. What scares me is that for the longest time, we have seen instances of some kind of violence, and immediately, let's be honest. The establishment, the corporate press, is much more likely to do this than the right is, to the right's disadvantage. Kyle Rittenhouse is a perfect example. He crossed state lines with a gun. He shot black people, like none of which is true, but they just keep saying it over and over again. Then when it comes to other instances, you'll get the right, or I should not even necessarily the right, but the anti-establishment, the establishment critical, whatever, saying this might not be political, this might be random, and we'll try to make sure we're getting the facts correct. Now I'm seeing a lot of people say no, revenge. Now I'm seeing all these tweets from conservatives saying, I don't care why the guy did it. If he has any posts that are pro Black Lives Matter, this was a Black Lives Matter attack. If we escalate to that point, and I think the establishment's driving it, this is going to contribute to more chaos, more clashes, and it actually will invoke more attacks and just make everything worse.
Yeah, there's a lot of details here that we should talk about, but we should talk about it in an honest perspective because there are some people arguing that he was deliberately turning into people when he was driving. He wasn't being chased. He called for political violence on white people before. He did refer to white people as, quote, the enemy. He was a huge Colin Kaepernick fan. There's a lot of...
That last one, that's it.
Yeah.
That's the most offensive thing I've heard.
Is it all Colin Kaepernick's fault? Of course not. But some of these details do matter, and they do deserve to be talked about in an honest, real way where it's not just pointing at people. But he was an extreme criminal. He had an extensive criminal past. He was just released 2 days ago on a $1,000 bond, which the Milwaukee County DA was bragging about his bail reform. Now, of course, he just came out publicly and he admitted what he did was a mistake, bailing him out. His record is huge. Why was this man walking the streets with such a crazy, extensive record? I'm even saying that as not a fan of the prison industrial complex. But there's something that needs to be discussed here that obviously the corporate media is not willing to discuss, doesn't want to discuss, that highlights a lot of nastiness within our society that does deserve to be surfaced, in my opinion.
Don't forget that one of the things that he was being charged with was skipping bail. So he actually has a record of not honoring the bail agreements that he has. And so for them to go ahead and then grant a reduced bail to an absurd amount, $1,000 bail, to put it in perspective, in my tiny town, my town is, or the big town near me is about 20,000 people. And I had a guy on it's the lowest level of felony drug possession charge you can have, like a Class E felony. And the bail for this was possession of a little bit of THC, was $20,000.
Wow.
And so this guy...
He just had a little bit of THC and they're trying to lock him up in prison?
He actually didn't have any THC, which was even better. But yeah, that was the justification was it was CBD oil. And they said, there's probably THC in it.
Wow.
It was embarrassing. But the bail on that was $20,000. This guy gets $1,000 bail. He's got a rap sheet that is significant with felonies on it.
There's 25 mugshots of him in multiple states. That's all I have to say. Yes.
But $20,000 bail, that means $2,000 down, right?
That means $2,000 in Minnesota. In Wisconsin, they have $2,000 down. But if you go ahead and honor the bail agreement, you don't get any back. Because that's you're paying that fee to a bondsman. So a bondsman will put up your $20,000 in exchange for 10%.
I see.
In Wisconsin, they don't allow that. In Wisconsin, it's cash bail. They don't allow you to full amount. So
really?
That's why Kyle had to pay the $2 million on his bail.
In Illinois, isn't it like you put up 10% or something?
Yeah, some states have that built in. Other states use bail bondsmen to do it. Wisconsin, it's the full cash amount. So his would be the equivalent still of a $10,000 bail in Minnesota. But that's nothing. I mean, and
right.
It's absolutely embarrassing that this guy with several felonies and skipping bail on his record.
Well, so like this case highlights like people who actually want to do criminal justice reform and bail reform and bond reform. Look, I've argued 1,000 bail hearings, okay, on the defense and prosecution side, right? And there's some nasty guys that get let out, and then there's some really rich guys who shouldn't get out, but get out because they got a lot of money, right? And this kind of conversation we're having actually goes back to that, which is where the conversation should be. But when CNN and everybody else jumps in and starts talking about race and hurling fake news and making up facts that don't exist, then we overlook the biggest problem. Yeah, I don't think there's like a normal human being on planet Earth that thinks this guy should have been out on bail. 21 years as a convicted felon, running around town, skipping bail, convicted of serious aggravated felonies. And oh, by the way, what was he on bail for previously? Punching the mother of his child and running her over twice, allegedly.
Yep.
Right? So, okay, is that not a violent crime? Maybe. And what's he doing on bail? You have this defund police movement that comes in, and it just sort of, it's an avalanche. And what these prosecutors now do is they just curtail themselves to the whims of the media. And they're like, well, this is the right thing to do. We should just give everybody bail. And I was like, I never heard that when I was a public defender.
Thanks for checking out this clip from the Timcast IRL podcast. If you want to see the full show, come back to this channel, youtube.com/TimcastIRL, Monday through Friday at 8 p.m., where you can leave comments and super chat, and we actually will read your comments on the show. Don't forget to like, share, subscribe, and if you want exclusive members-only content segments you can't get anywhere else, go to timcast.com, become a member, and we even have full bonus episodes. Thanks for hanging out, and we'll see you all next time.